to all participants. I am Corinne Tromsdorf, General Director of the French Solid Waste Partnership, and I will be hosting or moderating this discussion today. I would like to thank the Secretariat of the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions for hosting this webinar and giving us this opportunity to have a good discussion. You'll notice that the microphones actually have to stay muted. I'm not sure that they're muted by the organizer, but they have to stay muted. If you have questions, you may put them in the chat. And at the end, we'll try to address a couple questions, time permitting. On this, I would like to give the floor to Rolf Payet, the Executive Secretary of the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions.
Merci, Corinne. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, good afternoon and good morning and also good evening. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you on behalf of the Secretariat of the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions to this Zero Waste Roundtable. And it is indeed an important event as it helps us to reflect on how we can deal with waste in a very systemic way, but also in a global way. And as you know, the theme for this year is transitioning to zero waste, perspectives along the plastics value chain. So 2 days ago, we also celebrated the International Day of Zero Waste. And it was both a reminder of the enormous challenges that we have and that lie in front of us. And this year, as you know, the theme was about textiles waste. Sorry, my notes just disappeared. As you all know, the world generates about 2 billion tons of municipal waste each year. And it is no surprise that municipal waste management systems in many countries are hardly able to cope, if there is, with almost 3 million people lacking access to waste collection systems. We also have large, what we call mega waste dumps, which is living places for, I would say, hundreds of thousands of people, but also which does emissions into the atmosphere, hence the link to climate change. And there's been a study using satellite equipment, which shows that some of these emissions are actually quite significant, especially in the global south, and could contribute significantly, especially to methane and other gases emissions into the atmospheres. We also have the problem of open burning in many of these landfills, which also contributes to pollution, both locally and also globally. And there with burning, as you know, we have components like plastics, which are burning, which emits chemicals such as persistent organic pollutants into the atmosphere, which of course, as you know, can travel long distances. So dealing with waste has to start at home. And it is not something that is far away. It's something that is very close to home, and we have to deal with it. And of course, it puts at risk our health, and especially children, babies, pregnant mothers, and also the elderly. While this year's International Day of Zero Waste spotlights on textiles, as I mentioned, and fashion waste, today I would like to turn our attention to a material that is not only found in textiles, but in fact permeates countless and thousands of products and waste streams, and which has been dominating the environmental media for the last few years, and that's the problem of plastic waste. The recent studies have shown that microplastics are actually bioaccumulating in our brains and in our bloodstream. And of course, the next generation, as I mentioned before, of babies will be born with plastics in their bodies. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not good news. It is actually bad news, because when growing up, there was not really plastics, and I'm quite young. So this is your generation. My generation has put plastics on this planet, has put plastics in the oceans, has put plastics in the fish, has put plastics in our food and water, and has put plastics in our bodies. So I feel it is the responsibility of this generation for us to come up with measures, action, both at the political community level and also within business, to address the issue of plastics. As you know, there's ongoing treaty negotiations for international treaty on plastics, and I'm looking forward for them to complete their negotiations very soon. And as you all know, the Basel Convention has been very active on plastics for many years now, including the plastic amendments, which came into force a few years ago. Now, do we know how to handle plastics? I think we know how to handle plastic waste. I think we just need the political will, the investments brought in by industry. We need innovations, not only in the private sector and industry, but also at the local level, at the regional, and also at the global level. With the adoption of the plastic waste amendments, the parties to the Basel Convention have made history because they've made it, and still now we are the only legally binding instrument that currently and specifically addresses plastic waste. And I'm hoping that we will be joined very soon by this comprehensive international treaty. So what does the Basel Convention cover? As you all know, it's a powerful framework for addressing hazardous and other wastes, including plastic waste, especially through the three main pillars that underscore the implementation of the Basel Convention. The first one is, of course, controlling transboundary movement, because it is felt, and I think the parties are right, that countries themselves have the first responsibility to deal with their own waste. And waste should only be to be moved transboundarily when there are cases where there's no local capacity and local technology and expertise to handle those wastes, or there are opportunities elsewhere for those wastes to be handled in an environmentally sound manner. And environmentally sound manner doesn't mean dumping or trying to find illegal traffic in terms of plastic waste. The second one, of course, which is linked to the first one, is promoting environmentally sound management. And this is the use of techniques, technology, resources, financing, to ensure that the waste that is generated does not pollute the environment and impact on health. And I think this is central to how we implement the Basel Convention. And finally, it's the prevention and minimization. And I think many business organizations and industry will agree with me. Generating waste is a cost. So generating less waste means less cost. And this is not only to the business, but also to the environment. So I'm failing to see why this equation is not part of the value chain or the business model of businesses. Because when you reduce the waste or you minimize the waste, the business profits, but also the environment profits. And obviously the people profit. Given the many difficulties that countries are facing in managing hazardous and other wastes in an environmentally sound manner, the prevention and the minimization of the generation of waste is, as I mentioned, the most efficient type of waste management. And in cases where we cannot do so, then we can have transboundary movement, but this transboundary movement the waste should end up in a properly functioning facility, which can then environmentally manage this waste. Now, to ensure that the waste can move from its point of generation to its point of recovery, recycling, or environmental management is, of course, easily said than done. Because we need not only collection systems, we need sorting systems, we need transport systems, we need certification systems, and when it crosses border, we need to ensure that the waste is going to its intended destination. So as a result, we also have in the Basel Convention the PIC procedure, which is the prior informed consent procedure, which allows countries businesses through their country focal points to notify of such shipments of waste. As you know, there's been also ongoing work under the Basel Convention to provide clarity on the types of waste, because we know, and industry has also told us, when we label the waste, we ensure there's transparency in what the waste contains. It is much easier for them to manage the waste. So transparency, accountability, just as we have it when we buy a new product or a new type of food, we know what are the ingredients in the food we buy in the supermarket. In the same way, we need to know what's in the waste. We need to know the composition of the waste, as well as what's in the waste. And the work of the Basel Convention will continue to ensure that when we move waste across borders, that there is clarity and transparency in the types of waste being shipped around the world. So these are just a few elements of the work that we do here in the Basel Convention. And of course, we don't do it alone, and you know that. We do it together with other international organizations such as UNEP, UNDP, WHO, but also with important organizations such as the World Customs Organization, who plays an important role because they also ensure that we can move products across borders, including waste. We also work with a number of non-governmental organizations, and also we work mostly with countries. As you know, we also have a network of regional centers around the world. We now have over 27, and those regional centers help us to serve and implement the convention at the national and regional levels. As this is where, of course, this is where the front line of the waste issues are. So we are now getting ready for our COPs, and there are a number of waste issues that we'll be dealing with. And of course, one of the items is further work, further action that parties would want the Basel Convention to undertake in the area of waste. It is clear that we are running out of time. And while some may wish to see the completion of the treaty, we cannot afford to sit down and wait for a treaty to complete its negotiations. And I think we should continue. And this is the message we have received from parties to the Basel Convention. We will need to continue the work that we've started. And once the treaty is in force, then we'll be able to work together hand in hand to ensure the most effective and the most impactful actions on reducing plastic waste leakage into the oceans, into the seas, and yet into the environment. I'm looking forward to listening to you. Sorry, I cannot stay for long, but to hear your views, your inputs, and your insights into today's online session. So with those few words, I just want to say a big thank you to our Plastic Waste Partnership, which is the PWP, which has been ongoing now for several years. We've been through the partnership, been able to implement a number of key actions at the both national, regional, and global levels, and also been able to advance the work on the management of plastic waste, including also with municipalities as well as waste pickers. So there's so much work to be done, but I'm very happy also to say that we've done quite a lot of work in showing, especially in showing that waste management is possible, it's not impossible, and that we can overcome the hurdles that we have before us in ensuring that we clean our planet of all waste and, of course, achieve zero waste. So with those few words, allow me to wish you the very best, and let us celebrate the World Zero Waste this year by engaging more, increasing the visibility of the work we are doing, because others can follow by example, but also being more impactful in the work that we do. With those few words, Corinne, over to you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Rolf, for these very inspiring words. I'd like to ask Felipe Dad, who is Program Management Officer at the United Nations Environment Program, to give us a few more words of introduction before we start the conversation. And if you can be brief, that would be fantastic.
Of course, thank you, Corinne, and it's an honor for me to represent UNEP in this webinar promoted by BRS Convention and other partner organizations such as French Solid Waste Association and also ISWA and other co-organizers. So first of all, let me say that we are celebrating the third International Day of Zero Waste. This day was established in December of 2022 in an idea put forward by the Turkish government, and that was ratified by over 100 countries. And nowadays, this Zero Waste Day is facilitated by UNEP and UN Habitat. So it's an honor to UNEP to host such celebration. But it's not an honor to talk about this issue of waste in the world. And Rolf Payet just brought the staggering datum that we nowadays, I and all of you, we generate over 2 billion tons of waste, solid waste in the world. And one of the reasons for the creation or the establishment of the zero waste day is that if we don't take care of the waste management or the waste generation, this amount will increase by 2050. So we may produce almost 4 billion tons by 2050 if nothing is done. As you know, the focus this year is on textiles. So textiles is part of the crisis. Nowadays we produce twice the amount of textiles that we produced just at the beginning of this century. And clearly there is a problem of oversupply in the textile industry, which is leading to an issue in the waste management part of this value chain. The waste or the residues or the scrap materials of the textile production is around 15% of. So in the production part of the textile, we already lose about 15% of the fabric and all the textile materials. But also on the retail part or on the consumption part is where the big issue is, because we are buying too much and we are wearing too little these garments. There are a lot of estimates around, but I saw some studies showing that we have almost 9% of people say that they have at least one piece of clothes that they never use it. We had other surveys or studies showing that people has almost 9% of their wardrobes that were never used within a year. So you just live with just 10% of your wardrobe. So why you need to have all of these garments? And what's the problem of having so many pieces of clothes or having so many more than necessary? The problem is that this will lead to a crisis in the waste management part. And this is our concern here. The world is not ready to take care of all these materials that are being produced and will be waste in a few years or maybe in just a few months. Even high-income countries such as Europe, such as Japan, Australia, United States, even these countries are not able to provide the right solution for the management of textiles. Recycling rates in Europe, United States, etc., are around 5 to 10%, maybe 15 or maximum 20%. So this is too low. We need to do something because this also put pressures on the triple crisis of environment, which is the crisis of climate, biodiversity, and waste and pollution. So just to run into the conclusion, of course, the transition for this take, make, and waste linear economy or this linear business model of textile is not easy, as is not easy all the transitions. We know there are over 70 million jobs in the world in the textile industry, but Rolf Payet said, and I agree, that a transition is possible, nowadays is technically feasible. And we published the Global Waste Management Outlook last year in UNEP in collaboration with ISWA, and we showed that improving waste management practices in the world could lead to an annual net gain of over $100 billion in the world by 2050. So by taking action on reducing waste and bolstering waste management in the world, we are actually saving money in our economies. So here's where I wanted to put the focus. What is our role? Well, we have maybe 2 or 3 main roles. The first of us is we need to buy less. This is a law of the physics. The best waste is the non-waste, is the waste that was not produced. This is still the best strategy, and it will be always the best strategy. But we also need to have more circular attitude, so we need to promote, to reinforce the reuse, the repurpose, the refurbish, and other small changes, even in our daily laundries and taking care of ironing clothes. All these collaborate to the environmental crisis, and all of these can be solutions that we can promote as consumers. And let me conclude with a small personal story about my mother, because just to conclude, Corinne, the most lovable photo of my mother is a photo of her in her childhood wearing a dress. That dress was an umbrella made a dress by her aunt. So I don't want us to wear umbrellas, but I do want us to get conscious that we need to change the way that we do things in textiles, in the waste management, and we need to do this urgently. It's not easy, but it's possible. Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you, Felipe, for this call to urgent action. I really appreciate it. I just want to say a couple words about the French Solid Waste Partnership. I realized I didn't introduce it. It is a multi-stakeholder platform that regroups French public and private organizations working on waste management at large. And our ambition is to raise the topic of waste and resources management at the highest levels on the international scene. We are a member of the household waste partnerships and the plastic waste partnerships that are set up by the BRS Convention. On this, we have 4 speakers today in this roundtable. They will each provide a different perspective along the value chain of plastics. I'll ask each of them to share how they see their role in contributing to this transition towards zero waste that Felipe was urgently asking us to implement. Zero waste is along these 3 pillars: reducing the volumes of wastes, improving recycling, and then dealing with the waste that could not be neither avoided nor recycled. So I'd like to start with the upstream of the chain. Vincent Dufromont, he's a product manager with Decathlon. And I'd like to ask you, actually Decathlon is both a product manufacturer and a retailer. So what are the challenges of the transformation of industrial facilities and business models, and how do you see your role in addressing these challenges in this transition to zero waste?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Very glad to be with you all to share a point of view, because this is eventually only one point of view from Decathlon, which we want to be very humble, because the topic is huge, the stake is huge, and so we are one player out of it. But we try to do our best, definitely. And as you mentioned, Corinne, at Decathlon, we do design our product. We do coordinate all the value chain from production, transport, logistics, and so many other activities that most of them are internal to finally distribute our product. And we do believe that our position in handling the 2 key areas, upstream and downstream, give us a huge responsibility to find solution in our business model. We have basically 4 points where we believe we can play a key role. The first one, which we believe in, is our product need to be the most durable product, meaning that durability is for us a prerequisite to have impact when it comes to zero waste action, because it is no use to have produce for which we reduce the impact if those products have also a life that has been reduced. So we want to ensure that our product sustain long over the years. So we rethink our conception, our design of the product to make them last longer or to make them repairable. So the first topic here is to ensure that our product lasts long to reduce the impact. The second one is to reduce the impact itself of the product. So once we ensure that the product will sustain long enough or can have different life. I'll come back to it. We want to ensure that our product will have the minimal impact as possible because of the design of the product, where we try to avoid as less waste as possible, but also using low impact material or using low impact production, low impact transportation, so on and so forth. So first, make the product last. Second, reduce the impact of our product. Third, make our product recyclable, because to find a way to, if we want to extend the durability of our product is good, but at some point it may end to an end of life. And we want to ensure that all the materials that we consume can be reused in some other story, in some other new product. So the third point is find a way to make 100% of our product, as much as possible, recyclable. And last but not least, it is to find a way to collect those products, to make evolve the business model on some of our nature of product, and if possible on Decathlon, where we modify, we upgrade, we complete our business model with some new services where we can ensure that the product will come back to us. And as a designer,
Vincent,
manufacturer,
if it's okay
yes,
with you, I'll ask you to share about the business model right after.
yes, okay.
And it's very interesting because the first part of what you presented is really focused on how to reduce the amount of waste and the recyclability, or the amount of waste generated by having longer lasting products and the recyclability of materials. I'd like, before we move on to the business models, I'd like to hear from the perspective of cities who typically have the mandate to manage the waste. And Paul Curry is here from ICLE, Director of Urban Systems, and ICLE is Local Governments for Sustainability. We'd like, Paul, to hear from you on your perspective on the role of local authorities in this transition to zero waste and the specific actions they can take on zero waste and the collaboration that might be needed to achieve this.
Brilliant. Hi, everybody. I'm drawing on perspectives from a number of cities we've worked with, particularly in Africa and the Global South. And I think it's a very daunting question how to connect the global imperatives that we set and are often set by national government to the local realities that are faced by local actors and local governments. So ICLE's role is trying to do this translation work. In terms of zero waste, the difficulty is that cities don't have much control over what waste arrives in their jurisdictions, either cross-boundary transport or private consumer choices, industry choices about what materials are needed, what types of packaging to use. And so they don't have control over that, yet have a key mandate to safeguard the environment and to manage and treat these very varied and different types of materials. So it's quite a daunting expectation that's placed on cities with only one piece of the puzzle. Whenever we begin conversations around circular economy with cities, there's a whoa, we need to get waste management working well. And I think from discussions with cities, there are three key things that cities or local governments, subnational governments can take charge of. The first is understanding the waste flows. So here, investing in data collection, really good waste categorizations, and from the collaborative perspective, engaging with many of the organizations who work on waste cleanups, because what they show is the breakdown of wastes, what can pragmatically be done with it, and often the brand names of the waste that are arriving in their jurisdictions, which can be used for leverage and conversation. The second is to set a very clear enabling environment. So setting the intention and providing guidance and surety to private sector who are going to be investing in these jurisdictions is really important. For example, City of Cape Town set an intention to divert all organic waste from landfill by 2022 and 100% by 2027. Now that's highly ambitious, but it sets a very clear aim and galvanizes a call for partnership and contribution by many actors. As part of the enabling routes, infrastructure planning and deployment is vital. We have a difficulty where a lot of the focus that people working in cities land on is to do community awareness and communication campaigns. And that's a very important part of sort of cultural shifts, as our opening speakers have said. How do we make better informed choices about the products? How do we choose the products that are going to last longer, that are going to not produce waste that can't be treated? And you're trying to turn a very complex system into simple sort of sound bites. And I think, as an example, we often refer to things as recyclable, but most of the plastic that's landing in our jurisdictions may not be recycled in this jurisdiction. And so I think that's important for us to support residents with those types of nuance. So infrastructure deployment and planning is vital to that equation, because if you're communicating about the types of separation, the infrastructure needs to be ready to absorb that. And then finally, as part of this responsive local governments, to add voice into national and global processes. So we've heard about the current instrument that is being negotiated at global level. It's vital that subnational and local governments are articulated as a key actor in delivering upon this instrument, and not just in the waste management, but in setting the terms by which the types of waste are reduced or banned before they become the problem of the local government. So from that side, ICLEI has joined with a number of city networks to create a coalition of subnational governments to end plastic pollution, and local governments can join by signing their names to this position that'll be taken forward with advocacy to parties. I'll pause there.
Thank you very much, Paul. And maybe you can share that link to the coalition in the chat. I've heard about, from what you say, the importance of setting targets and having the right framework for these public-private collaboration within cities. And that brings me to reflect furthermore on that prevention framework. Just could you maybe pull up that slide that presents the 10 R's? We heard earlier Vincent share with us the first few of those 10 R's, but as you see on that slide, the recycle and recover are the ones that pertain to waste management, and that we often think about when we think about circular economy. But there are so much more things that can and should be done upstream of this. So maybe Vincent, can you share for beyond the design of the product, which you've already shared, what are the other parts of those R's which pertain more to the business model that you take action on?
Yes. So if I take an example about the football, so the ball of the football, one of the core product, maybe one of the most iconic sport products of the world. Today, we have already made a huge work on our ball to reduce the impact of each ball, to make this ball last longer. And those balls start also to be recyclable. But in our current business model, somehow it has not the maximum impact we want to reach, because when we sell a ball to a user, to a customer in our store or digital, or when we sell a ball to a club, we do not have the ball coming back to us to reuse. And there is not today a flow that exists to manage the ball the same way we can manage some of our wastage as a company or as a citizen. And so our strategy has been now to tackle the club market, which is probably the biggest market in our part, because the club are using a lot of football every year. And so we decided to tackle that business model of the club, not by selling the ball anymore, but by going through a subscription. So we will release in the next 10 days an offer for all the clubs where they can subscribe for a number of balls, which will always belong to us, because this is about subscription. And so we can ensure that we can leverage a recyclable ball that would have lasted longer, thanks to our previous work. But by getting the ball back, we will ensure that the ball will be reconditioned when it's possible. Basically, when the bladder is not punctured, the bladder can last longer. There is no end of life for the bladder, which represents 40% of the environmental impact of the ball. And we will be able to reproduce a ball in France to send it back to the clubs. And so basically the purpose here, it is to go a step further after making our product last longer, reduce the impact, make them repairable and make them recyclable to ensure that we will collect the ball, finding a new business model. And last but not least, this is why we speak at Decathlon for years now about an integrated end-to-end value chain, because mastering the complete value chain with our partners that are everywhere in the world, we are able to move in synergy all the segment of our value chain to find a way to maximize our action. But once again, with a lot of humility because the stake is very high.
Thank you very much for the insights on the need for systemic change to support these new types of business models. And I'd like to focus, we can remove the slide if you want. I'd like to focus more on this business aspect because economic opportunities are actually the crux for making the change happen. They actually, that's what motivates people to change. In emerging economies, waste collection, as well as the product reuse or repairing, refurbishing, are economic opportunities for the informal sector. And I'd like to turn to Taylor Cass-Talbot from the International Alliance of the Waste Pickers. Taylor is Advocacy and North America Region Coordinator. And I'd like to ask you, Taylor, if you could share in a few words how the Alliance actually support waste pickers first, very, very briefly in just a minute, and then we'll dive into some more questions.
Corinne, for having me today. I think one of our biggest efforts is really to reframe zero waste so that it doesn't minimize waste in human capacity as well across the north and south of the United States or of the world. We support waste pickers in this transition in our material economy from circular to linear, linear to circular, and really by organization providing space for exchange and networking for waste pickers, and also by modeling democratic structures as a democratic trade union for more than 460,000 waste pickers around the world. We work to provide opportunities for exchange, model democratic systems, and be able to develop like really globally relevant across all different regions in emerging economies as well as very well developed economies, recommendations on topics like extended producer responsibility, just transition, and these recommendations and resources help waste pickers navigate and negotiate to build resilience in the face of all range of dramatic change that we're seeing in our economies, including a circular economy. So we really try to help waste pickers push to pluralize the benefits and opportunities in materials management systems and to really resist consolidation, particularly with the global push for extended producer responsibility and an inclination to consolidate systems under producers. We really push to pluralize those opportunities and benefits.
Thank you very much for this overview. We sometimes hear that the informal sector might be jeopardized by the reduction of waste generation because they would have less business and less income opportunities. However, you mentioned when we discussed before this meeting that it doesn't have to be that way if we plan and advance this transition and acknowledge the existence of the sector. And I'd like you to share some specific examples of actions taken by the informal sector that actually contribute to the zero waste transition positively.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for one, there are already waste pickers working in reuse and much more circular, not necessarily recycling-based systems. But we also have some parts of the world, and particularly South Asia,
Can you
places like
focus? We have very little time. Can you just give me the India example of packaging waste prevention?
particularly in India, where we've seen organizations like Hasirudala in Bangalore that have started to implement zero waste event services, so reusable dishware services, composting, and that's really supported by single-use plastic bans, actually, that are incentivizing organizations and companies to contract them in this. Some of the challenges, that we've also seen waste picker organizations attempt to get involved in refill systems. This has been really challenging in places like Pune and Bangalore, where they've attempted this. They haven't really been very successful, and I think that that's partly because these are small-scale pilot-based or kind of small enterprise-based systems or business attempts without broad investment in scaling at across a municipal level. The lack of uniformity of packaging and lack of convenience in return, and I would say just overall lack of conceptualization within both the business and environmental sectors of the scale that these systems need to be in order to adequately accommodate not only organized waste pickers but also those who aren't organized.
Thank you very much. So these are great examples, and especially the one on the refill system actually highlights the need for that citywide planning and collaboration with the city authorities. Paul, back to you. Could you maybe share with us how or why waste management and planning at citywide level is a complex task?
Sure. I mean, big questions. I think it's complex because in the global south, we have deficits of built infrastructure, which means that most of our infrastructure is social. People are the ones moving resources around. So informal actors, as we've heard, are the ones driving much of the waste sector. But where waste doesn't have a market value and there's a responsibility typically held by local government to do the environmental waste protection, there's often discord, and often these relationships are framed through an antagonism. But it's been really valuable to see how local government officials and waste picker associations or NGOs, community mobilizing organizations, are trying to bridge those perceptions. So here again, understanding where the jurisdiction of local government is necessary for the types of wastes that simply cannot end up in our environment, and where there are wastes that have a market value that can boost an economy. So an example that I find really exciting taking place in Tanzania is led by Nipefagio, who are engaging communities around community waste collectors, separators, and the key need there is to invest in land for waste transfer stations. The community does the separation. The community derives whatever value they need out of the waste, and the municipality has access to these specific waste transfer areas, saving them resources in terms of trying to get trucks through informal settlements, but leaving leaving value in these communities. And so they're talking about different waste streams, not just plastics, but also organic waste, which, if it's mixed, renders the plastic sort of untreatable or unusable. But organic waste, also with a very high water content, is silly to transport all the way around the city. So they've received really interesting diversion rates through meaningful engagement with communities, which is often not about environmental protection or stopping waste or consumerism, but rather around health and community solidarity. So I think local governments can invest in these. Yeah.
Great, thanks. There's definitely an incentive for cities to invest in all these prevention actions, because managing the waste, the final waste that is produced in a safe manner, is very costly, and so definitely there's an incentive there. So we've heard about quite a few different examples of involving the informal sector into the zero waste transition, and also about the complexity of planning at citywide level. But I'd like to hear from another angle. I'd like to hear from ISWA, the International Solid Waste Association, on their role in this transition to zero waste and the importance of sharing experiences across countries and between professionals. Carlos Silva Filo is the immediate past president of ISWA and is here with us today. Carlos, could you share about the work of ISWA in facilitating this knowledge exchange, and also how you see the role of ISWA in contributing to the zero waste transition?
Yes, sure, Corinne. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here today to learn from the colleagues here in the panel, and also to share some thoughts from this perspective as the International Solid Waste Association. One thing that we heard today is that data is crucial in order to help us to take the right decision. As Felipe mentioned, last year, ISWA has published jointly with UNEP the Global Waste Management Outlook 2024. Is the most up-to-date report regarding waste management in the world. And the information, the numbers shown in the report are really alarming. It's the waste generation, as we also heard, is growing fast, both in terms of quantity and complexity. And we just commented like the most of the impacts happen at the local level in our cities. Another point, as we are kind of like advocating and trying to raise awareness, is if we continue business as usual, the waste generation will almost double by 2050, and the management costs will raise from $361 billion per year to $640 billion per year. And the cost of externalities will represent almost 70% of it. So as the International Solid Waste Association, we are working to promote better waste management and the transition towards a circular economy. We believe that this waste as garbage era is over. We cannot continue with this linear approach, but we need urgently a paradigm shift. We need to really adopt a perspective of waste as a resource. And this comes to the topic of our roundtable, of our webinar today. We need to move towards zero waste, because today we have more than 2.7 billion people without waste collection and more than 3 billion people suffering of inadequate waste management, and it affects the most vulnerable ones. So kind of like we need really the engagement from the whole society. We need engagement from governments, from industries, from the academia, financing institutions towards a global push. We are really pursuing this goal to raise awareness about the urgent needs to enable sustainable waste management for all, because this is a basic human right according to a recent resolution from the United Nations General Assembly. We need to make this zero waste approach implementable on the ground and supporting the transitions towards a more holistic system under a circular economy. So to bring it mainstream, known and deliverable, delivered all over the world. The global push is the extra mile we really need to seek for and engage everybody under the same umbrella, rowing towards the same direction, because we are talking about it, I would say, for the last 20 years or so. And we really see many challenges, bottlenecks, and difficulties. We cannot afford to keep business as usual anymore. So what we are now promoting through ISVA and the different networks we participate, also as a member of the United Nations Secretary General's Advisory Board on Zero Waste, through the Center of Excellency on Circular Economy, really trying to engage most of the partners, and I see many of them engaged today at this webinar. So let's go together and let's make the change happen.
Thank you so much, Carlos, for your inspiring words. We need to bring everybody together to push for this systemic change, as we've heard throughout the conversation. But we also need collaboration at local level, and we've heard it throughout what each of the speakers have said, to make it happen locally. And that it is reduce the amount of waste, recycle as much as possible of what is still produced as waste, and manage properly, manage in an environmentally sound manner the waste that is produced, and that has to find a safe final disposal. On this, I would like to hear about one more example of collaboration from Taylor, and that involves the waste pickers. You had an example around textiles that I thought might be interesting to share in very, very briefly, because we don't have very much time.
Corinne. Yeah, I think it's an example of a really effective municipal partnership, not in an emerging economy, but actually in the United States here, with my host organization, Ground Score Association in Portland, Oregon. We have this municipal partnership in providing laundry services for the unhoused community, which is large and growing. About 25% of the waste that we collect in the streets from these communities is textiles. And of course, most of those are plastic-based textiles that are either being open burned or open dumped for lack of both waste collection service and lack of adequate laundry service. And 90% of that we're collecting is actually reusable. And so we are collecting and receiving laundry, essentially, textiles, washing them, and then redistributing them through pretty expansive networks throughout the city for reuse, for wearing, essentially. We're collecting about 5 tons of textile waste a month, and this is like a very small scale pilot project. So I think there's so much opportunity out there for waste reduction in ways that are also socially inclusive and providing opportunity for those who need it most.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Taylor, for sharing this. Jost, I don't know, I didn't follow the chat, but was there a specific question that you think has value for us to bring here on this roundtable? And otherwise, I'll just ask each of the speakers to say one concluding words before we give you back the floor.
Well, there were a few questions, both private and also in the chat, but these were more on like very specific initiatives to have a name of something, etc.
Okay.
So we can follow up on those later, I think. So I think we can
Perfect.
use instead the time for what you proposed. Thank you.
So back to each of you, thank you for sharing your specific role in contributing to the zero waste transition. If you'd like to, you can share one sentence on what you feel is something you want the participants to take home from this conversation. Who wants to go first? I'll direct it to...
Maybe one simple things, because I'm personally definitely convinced about that, is thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity to talk to each other, because what is sure is regarding the complexity of the stake, we cannot solve that kind of issue all alone. And we know that it's something that have to be coordinated across all the value chain of the company, but also with the cities, also with the politics, so many stakeholders to work together end to end to finally come to a better solution, if possible, the ideal solution. But we need to work all together on that stake.
Working together, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Next.
Yeah, I'll just leave a
Taylor,
reminder.
yeah, Taylor.
Sorry, I'll just leave a reminder that zero waste is also really about minimizing the waste in human capacity and skill across the economy, because zero waste without waste pickers is garbage.
Thank you. Paul?
It's very hard to put it in a soundbite, but I think more investment in social infrastructure is needed. We tend to put a lot of emphasis on the shiny chrome waste to energy plant, but actually smaller interventions, particularly in global south contexts, will have much wider impacts.
Thank you. Carlos?
Well, I will really emphasize this need for collaboration, for better collaboration. I would say the era of working in silos is over. We cannot really afford to have each one trying to solve it's like a footprint on our own rooms closed in our inside our doors. We really need to expand this wheel. We heard a lot about what's happening today, many initiatives. So it's important to scale up these initiatives. It's important to really show to governments and to individuals that every individual role counts, and the economic burden we are suffering is huge. So it's really urgent to take this extra step. Let's raise this flag and go together to change the approach.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Over to you, Jost, for the concluding words.
I was still muted. Well, thank you very much. And really, this was a very, very, very inspiring discussion. A lot of food for thought. And I really appreciated the fact that we had so many different perspectives coming together here. And yet, despite the different perspectives, very much aligned and dare I say, united in a common objective. So that's really great to see. So in the absence of Rolf, unfortunately, he couldn't come back for the closing remarks. I will be providing them on behalf of our executive secretary. I also realized maybe I haven't formally introduced myself. So my name is Jost Ditkrist, working with the BRS Secretariat as Program Management Officer. So yeah, so now I'm very pleased to provide those remarks by Rolf on behalf of Rolf. Yeah, as I just noted, it's been a really excellent discussion, and I think we have not only been able to identify key challenges, but also, and perhaps more importantly, really explored actionable solutions. I mean, from a producer's perspective, for example, we have heard about the paramount importance of making products that are recyclable and, even more important, durable, right? And how life cycle analysis can be a powerful tool to reduce material loss during production. We also learned about innovative business models moving forward. We had that great example with the football, which to me looks very, very promising. Actually, in the area of chemicals management, this is also something that is being pursued more and more. Chemical leasing, so to speak, to provide the services that the chemicals provide, but then the company is still responsible for the cleanup and so forth. And yeah, so it's a very promising business model, I think. We also heard about the challenges faced by municipalities who really have limited control over the waste that they need to manage. And we discussed how both education and access to facilities go a far way in helping public authorities manage waste streams that have no market value. I really appreciate also the message that was given when Paul explained that they're also bringing together relevant stakeholders to reach out to the INC to have a voice there, which I think is very, very important. Just as important as the other thing he mentioned, which is community engagement. So yeah, I fully concur on that. And of course, I think we're all intrigued by the insights into the informal sector and how integrating waste pickers into waste management plants will not only improve their working conditions, but also help increase recycling rates. And thanks a lot also for these examples. For example, these zero waste event services and the refill systems. And also interesting and valuable that you mentioned some of the challenges, because of course there's always still work to do and these are pilots, but yeah, I'm sure that this is how big things start, right, with a pilot. And then, of course, I very much also appreciated Iswa's strong call for a paradigm shift for waste as a resource and global push to end the business as usual. And I think we can very much align on that. And we were reminded that waste management is a cost to society, even when there are opportunities for recovery and recycling. Which means that we need to follow a dual strategy, right? So reduce unnecessary waste wherever possible, while at the same time also improving our waste management systems, in particular, but not exclusively in developing countries. So last but not least, I want to reiterate the importance of collaboration across sectors, of partnerships, bringing together the public and private sector, civil society organizations, academia, of a spirit of multilateralism, something that has been put into question recently in different fora, inspiring cooperation among countries, and the importance of individual action by all of us. So as several of you have just highlighted in your brief remarks at the end, I fully concur that only by working together can we transition to zero waste. So I would like to thank you very, very much for your attention, and very special thanks to the excellent speakers we had today. It's really been a pleasure, I think, for all of us. And then with that, I would like to hand back to Corinne for any final words.
No more final words. We're over time. So thank you very much to everybody.
Great.
Everybody.
Big thanks to the audience. Thank you very much for joining us.